Hey, I'm Dean and this is Legacy Voyage. In Season 1, I'm documenting my journey to earning my first 100K net worth as a full-time college student. Join me as I share some of the lessons I learned along the way. In the Bible, there's just one moment, part of it, I don't know what you call it, but there's one part where some guy comes up to Jesus and he asks him, like, hey, what's up? How do I have eternal life? Or something like that. It's like, how do I get into heaven? And Jesus gives him the two greatest commandments. The two things, if you follow these things, you'll get into heaven. You'll have eternal life. And Jesus says, first, love God. Second, love thy neighbor. And so with those two things, the first one seems kind of obvious. It's like, okay, well, first, love God means you like devoted to him, pray, all these things. The second one, no, it's kind of obvious. Be nice to people. And the way Jesus puts it is like, who is your neighbor? And it really gets you thinking around your neighbor is actually not just the people you like, not just the people who are nice to you, but also the people who are mean to you. It's literally everyone. And so that's who he classifies as thy neighbor. But he has a little caveat to the second rule where he says, love thy neighbor as thyself. And that is something that I learned really over these past couple days, past weeks, because I'm being honest and vulnerable again. I've really been struggling with my diet, really been struggling with loving myself in terms of taking care of myself and making sure that I get the nutrition that I want. And this raised for me a huge paradox that I was trying to wrap my mind around. And I'm calling it the selfish paradox. Because the way I used to think of it is if I'm trying to go and be the nicest person that I can be in the world, then I'm always going to try to be selfless. I'm always going to try to serve others and help them and do whatever they need to do. And in that sense, I'll be selfless. But what's interesting here, something that Jesus notes is he's like, whoa. First of all, you got to love yourself. And what does that mean? What does that look like? I think he's saying in this message is that in order to be selfless to the best of your ability, it requires you to be selfish. And so selfish in that way is a prerequisite to being selfless because you need a certain amount of selfishness to where, okay, you're taking care of yourself, making sure you're all right, eating the food you need to, making sure all your areas are fulfilled. And when you do that, then it gives you the ability to be selfless. And that's the big shift, which I think is really, really powerful. Because in this whole time of me trying to be there for the ones I love, it raises the question of, am I even being there for myself? And there's this other story that my brother told a while back, and he's like, I was trying to help someone out, and this person, they came to him because he was like in charge, so to say, of that group or that organization. And so this person comes up to him trying to look for advice, look for guidance. And she's like, well, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. And she also says how she's like, feels so overwhelmed because she's always trying to do these things. And she lists out all these things like, I'm trying to make food, I'm trying to serve others, I'm trying to do all these things. Like lists out 5, 10 different things that she's doing for others. And then my brother asks her, he's like, yeah, you have all those things you're doing for everyone else. Now tell me, what are you doing for yourself? And she pauses, and a minute passes by, 2 minutes pass by, and there's this long silence. And she can't think of anything. That's the big lesson. Being selfish, to a certain extent, to a certain level, is a prerequisite to being selfless. And obviously, there's two major spectrums on this. Like on one end, you got extreme selfishness. On the other end, you got being extreme selflessness, where you're like giving everything to everyone else and not taking that time for yourself. And on both ends of the spectrum, it's like extremely unhealthy, probably not the best, but it requires this middle ground of making sure you're taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. And it's like this idea of how you're going to give away money to other people if you're broke. It's like you literally have nothing to give. How are you going to give love to others if you have no love for yourself? And it's that type of idea of being selfish is a prerequisite for being selfless. And along the same lines of me trying to be quote unquote selfish in terms of taking care of myself, my physical health especially, my diet especially, raise the question of like, what am I thinking through as I'm trying to be selfish? Because in that sense, I was like, okay, the reason that I want to be a healthy person is so that I can be happy. And I was like, thinking through it, if I can get my diet on track, and if I can become that healthy person, then there's this like other level to happiness that I can unlock. And once I do that, then I'll be like the happiest I've ever been ever. Because that's kind of what happened before. where there was something that I was doing, and eventually I stopped doing that thing, and then it unlocked like this whole nother level of mental health happiness that I didn't even know was actually possible. And so I was kind of thinking that same way to my diet and my nutrition. It's like, okay, if I could do this, I'll unlock the next level of happiness. And this morning, actually, had this huge insight from someone who's really, really special to me. And she tells me, it's not that this happiness is the end goal of it. It's more like happiness, and that other level to being happy is simply a byproduct of drawing closer to the person you want to become. That was a big epiphany. It was like, if you go at life and you're like, okay, how can I be happy? Probably gets super confusing, don't know what to do. Like, okay, I'm happy when I'm eating a bunch of junk food, but that happiness is like only in the moment. It's like this momentary happiness. Whereas if I go at life and I'm like, okay, how can I draw closer to my dream identity? And in doing so, happiness is simply a byproduct of it, of me becoming the person that I want to become. That was another epiphany I had. It just reminded me of something that relates to this idea of a dominant question. And I brought this up ages back with the podcast I was talking about. There's this guy who was like 5 a.m. and he was invited to some shoot to be on some movie to help Will Smith practice his lines and memorize it because he was like a brain coach. And so he's there with Will Smith. It's like, I think it was actually even earlier than 5. It was like 3 in the morning, something insane. And it's in California, but it's at 3 in the morning. So it's like freezing cold outside for Cali standards, whatever that is. But it's super freezing outside. Everyone has their coats on, shivering. Everyone's super tired because it's super early in the morning. No one got the sleep they needed. So, of course, people are grumpy, people are grouchy. And then in comes Will Smith. And Will Smith, he comes up with like hot chocolate and plays music. And he brings a certain vibes about him and makes everyone like lightens the room. And then after that happened, the brain coach, he goes up to Will and he's like, hey, Will, why did you do that? You didn't have to do that at all. I mean, you could have just been like everyone else, just standing around, being super cold. You could have been practicing your lines there, honestly. Why did you bring hot chocolate for everyone and do all these extra things to lighten the mood? And Will Smith says, because when I go at life, I always have this dominant question that I ask myself every day. Every decision I do, I ask myself this question. And it's how can I make this moment even more magical? And that was the question that Will Smith lived by. With every single twist and turn along the way, ask himself that question and then do whatever the answer says. Like, do whatever can make this moment more magical. And that moment was like, bring hot chocolate for everyone, music, tell jokes, and make everyone laugh. And so after that, I was trying to figure out what's my dominant question? What's the question that I live by? And so that question became, what's the cash value? And I applied that to everything. I applied that to even choosing my major, picking my classes, food, relationships, business stuff, like literally everything. I was like, what's the cash value of all these things? And how does it help me become the person I want to become? And that was a dominant question I decided on. The other day, I was sitting in class in Sunday school. This idea comes up again. And the question was like, how do you treasure Jesus? It was a long pause. It's like this, it's so open-ended. Like, what do you do to cherish Jesus? I'm like, I don't know. I just do. But then it reminded me of this idea of a dominant question. And this bracelet I have on my wrist, it says, he would love first. And that's the answer to my new dominant question that I'm choosing to live by now. What would Jesus do? Because that's my dream identity. And so when I'm going, making all these decisions, all these choices, it's like, okay, that's my dominant question. That's how I'm going to live my life and direct the things that I'm going to do. And so instead of what would a healthy person do, or what would a great leader do, or what would a devoted son do, the question is, what would Jesus do? And in that, I'm placing Jesus as my dream identity and directing my choices and decisions because in the end, he is my dream identity. And in being selfish of becoming that dream identity, the person that I want to become, in that process, I will also be selfless and get to the point where I can be extremely selfless in the things that I do. And along the way, I'll also have this byproduct because I'm closer to that dream identity of happiness and joy that lasts and doesn't fade away. It's like, it's not this feeling that comes and goes. It's something that's just there. And it's a commitment, which reminds me of another epiphany I had. All of these epiphanies this episode. This a lot of epiphanies, a lot of stories. But I think I'll hold that one off for some later episode because it's a really big one, really important one. But I think I'll just share that later. It has to do with faith and love. But moving on to my life update. Let's see. First, we got health or myself. I kind of rephrase this into taking care of myself so I can take care of my people, so I can take care of my wealth or of my work. Or a better way to phrase it is love myself so I can love my people, so I can love my work. And in terms of myself, like I said, it's been a struggle. And it's kind of annoying because I've repeated that same sentiment, same idea for the past like 3 episodes so far. The past 3 weeks, I've been hinging on this idea of I'm trying to take care of myself. I am trying to get the sleep I want, to get the nutrition that I want, to do all these things that I want to do over and over again. I'm failing. And so earlier today, I was having this like coaching session with myself where I really try to think critically and give myself advice, because a lot of the times we're super good at giving advice, but we don't even listen to our own advice. And so I did that with myself, and I was like, I had an epiphany. So I was giving advice to someone else, and all the advice I gave to that person, it was someone else who's different, like literally applied to my exact situation. I was like, I was being too hard on myself. I was putting too much pressure. I was doing it alone. All these things, like, oh, dang, I'm not even listening to the advice that I'm giving other people. And so having that coaching session really opened my mind to how I can actually change what I'm doing, because I've been trying to do the same things over and over and over again. Obviously, it's not working because this is like week 3 of me having the same problem, the same issue that I'm trying to overcome. And so I was like, okay, this is my new thing. This time, I'm going to be super on top of my goal of getting to 190 pounds. 190 pounds is the goal. And I'm not doing it alone this time. This time, I'm going to tell the ones I love and ask for their support. That's the big change that I'm going to do now. And in doing so, I think, or at least the hope is, it'll change my behavior. And that's a nice bridge into my people, where I think if I'm vulnerable with them, which is something else that we've been looking into, like Brene Brown and her diving into vulnerability and how it's super, super important to building deep, deep connections. And being vulnerable with them, I think it'll just deepen my relationships with the one I love, with everyone that is really important to me. So it's killing 2 birds with 1 stone, I guess, looking at it in the positive light. But for my work, of course, with my health not being at the level that I want it to be at, in terms of my diet being in place, I, of course, don't get the things done that I want to. But low key, I've actually been making a lot of progress. Even just today, I specifically set a timer for like 50 minutes and I knocked out so many different tasks that I wanted to get done. Like, okay, that's fire. But making some progress with Ninja News, it's actually turning into like a legit thing where I can offload all these different tasks and have different people work on other stuff while I'm doing everything that I need to do to keep the business going. Like high level strategic stuff. Everyone else, like, I'm giving them assignments, delegating. And so that's really awesome. With the internship, learning a bunch of like Medicaid in Pennsylvania for dental, because I got a deal that I'm kind of heading and working on over there. And then a bunch of other stuff like Coach V, now he's working on Facebook ads. And so the hope is that we'll get people to the masterclass and then from there, sell them on the course and then make some sales. But things seem to be coming together. And it's actually making me realize that I haven't really set goals that I'm actively fighting towards, even for my health, but for my wealth too, for my work. I haven't set like those, I want to make this amount of money by this time, stuff like that. Maybe I'll do a deep dive into like goal setting and stuff and keeping track of my goals, making sure I'm on top of it. But that's all for this episode. Hopefully it came through, because last time I tried doing this while I was on a walk, the audio didn't even go through. So if you're listening to this, then it means it worked. So that's pretty cool. I shall see you in the next one. I record these episodes completely free to share success with everyone. So the only thing I ask is that if you learned anything or found something interesting in this episode, just leave a review and share it with a friend. Only takes 5 seconds and it would mean the world. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next episode. Tatok, see you.